Did your grandmother say you were descended from a shipwrecked Spanish sailor? Well, if so, you aren't alone. It is one of the most enduring mysteries in Celtic history. But what are the clans and the surnames connected to this story, and is there any truth to these tales? And by the end of this video, you may discover that the Spanish secret in your ancestry is much older than many people imagined. But first of all, what does the Black Irish even mean? Well, it conjures up images of Irish people with exotic hints of Spanish or Mediterranean ancestry, although the way people describe it is slightly different depending on the source. In general, however, it is used to describe Irish people or people of Irish descent who have darker features than you would normally associate with Ireland. And the combination of this Spanish-looking ancestry and more typical Irish phenotypes often creates interesting combinations. The most common look people refer to as Black Irish is someone with jet black hair, or very dark hair at least, and piercing blue eyes. I will define this as the Black Irish look for this video. And for centuries, the most popular explanation for this was the legacy of the battered Spanish Armada. Now in 1588, King Philip II of Spain sent a massive fleet against England. But after storms and disaster shattered the Armada, many Spanish ships were wrecked off the coast of Scotland and Ireland, as this map shows. According to legend, survivors escaped inland, married into Gaelic clans, and left behind generations of Black Irish descendants. It's an incredible story. Shipwrecked Spaniards, hidden bloodlines, ancient clans protecting foreign survivors from the English crown. And this is only the latest story of Spanish links in Ireland, with the Milesians another famous origin story in Ireland that links back to Spain or Iberia. But what is the truth about all this? Well, before we look at that, let's look at the clans and the surnames connected to the Black Irish. Now, one of the most famous examples of this is the O'Driscolls of West Cork. Now, the O'Driscolls were one of the great maritime clans of Southwest Ireland, controlling harbours and coastal strongholds around Baltimore and the Roaring Water Bay. Their territory sat close to several Armada wreck sites, making them natural candidates for stories about Spanish survivals. But the reality is probably more interesting than the myth itself. The O'Driscolls already had centuries of contact with Iberian traders before 1588. Their ports linked Ireland to Spain through wine, fishing, salt and Atlantic commerce, long before the Armada disaster. So if Mediterranean ancestry entered coastal Irish families like theirs, it likely happened gradually through trade and intermarriage rather than one dramatic shipwreck. Then there are the famous merchant dynasties of Galway, especially the Lynches, Blakes and Bodkins. These families traded heavily with Spain and Portugal for generations. Galway was one of Ireland's great Atlantic ports, and Spanish merchants were regular visitors there. The Lynch surname itself is actually Anglo-Norman rather than Spanish, but Galway's long history helped fuel the belief that some Western Irish families carried a Spanish type. Now, the O'Sullivans are perhaps the most famous clan associated with the Black Irish legend. Their territories in Kerry and West Cork sat in the heart of Spanish Armada folklore and Atlantic trade routes. During the 9 Years' War, Donald O'Sullivan Bear fought alongside Spanish forces sent by King Philip III during the Battle of Kinsale in 1601. This helped fuel later legends that some dark-haired Irish families descended from Spanish sailors who reached Ireland's southwest coast. After the collapse of the Gaelic resistance, Donald actually later fled to Spain himself, where he entered Spanish service and died in Madrid in 1618. And if you've got stories of the Black Irish in your family history, please let me know in the comments below and what your surname or clan name is. Now, other Irish clans also became tied to the Black Irish tradition. The O'Flahertys of Connemara were associated with isolated Atlantic Ireland, where dark hair and pale complexions were often viewed as evidence of an older population. The O'Malleys, Burkes and McCarthys all ruled territories heavily connected to Atlantic trade and coastal folklore. Now, the Fitzgeralds are another important example. Though originally Norman, they became deeply rooted in Munster. Their Black Irish reputation grew from Southwest Ireland's Spanish trade routes, and later stories surrounding dark-haired featured families in Cork and Kerry. Other families linked to Spain are the great dynasties of Ulster, namely the O'Neills and the O'Donnells, although they became linked to Spain through politics and war rather than shipwrecked legends. During the 9 Years' War, Hugh O'Neill and Hugh Roe O'Donnell sought Spanish help against English rule. After their defeat, the flight of the Earls in 1607 strengthened the connection between Gaelic Ireland and Catholic Spain. This matters because it created a real historical link between Irish nobility and the Spanish world. Spain really was part of Gaelic Ireland's story, just mostly through diplomacy, religion, trade, and military alliance rather than mass settlement. The Costellos and Delaneys are often mentioned too. They were sometimes linked to the legend because foreign-sounding surnames help fuel stories about outsiders or Mediterranean ancestry. In a similar way, the Lavins are especially interesting because a similar name exists as both a Spanish surname and place name. This helped fuel theories that some Black Irish ancestry might connect not just to the Armada, but to much older Atlantic links between Ireland and Iberia. Even common surnames such as Murphy and Kelly have branches in Western Ireland that claim a Spanish secret. And the story does not stop in Ireland. Many Scottish clans also have links to the Black Irish in their own way. Clans such as the MacNeils, the MacDonalds, the MacLeods, Campbells, Kennedys, Galbraiths, and MacDonalds often have some of these links in their legends. Traditions from the Hebrides and Argyll often describe dark-haired, pale-skinned families with striking, piercing blue eyes, creating a Scottish counterpart to the Black Irish image. And the MacLeans actually have one of the most famous Armada stories of all. And I actually came across this last year when me and my dad visited the island of Mull and went to Duart Castle. At Duart Castle in the Isle of Mull, stories still survive about the Spanish galleon San Juan de Cilia, which anchored in Tobermory Bay in 1588. The ship later exploded in the bay, creating centuries of treasure legends and stories about stranded Spanish sailors marrying into local clans. But is there actually any truth to these clan links and these surname links to the Black Irish? Well, what is perhaps somewhat surprising is that in individual cases, it is actually somewhat historically plausible. For instance, we know the story of Francisco de Cuellar, a Spanish nobleman and army captain. He was one of the most famous survivors of the 1588 Armada disaster, after his ship was wrecked off the coast of Ireland near County Sligo. His first-hand account proves that some Spanish survivors were sheltered by Gaelic Irish families opposed to English rule. During his escape across Ireland, he was protected by families connected to groups such as the O'Rourke's. But from a population level, the number of survivors was far too small to explain the Black Irish look across the entire country. Like I say, there could have been very isolated cases, but on a population level, it was pretty meaningless. And this brings us to the genetics. Modern DNA studies show there was no massive spike of Spanish ancestry in Ireland or Scotland connected to the Armada or just after the Armada. But that does not mean that Ireland, Scotland and Spain lack deep historical connections. After the last ice age, early hunter-gatherers moved along the Atlantic coastal routes into Ireland, Scotland from Western Europe. And we know that these Western hunter-gatherers largely had dark hair and blue eyes. Then around 6,000 years ago, early European farmers arrived carrying ancestry from Anatolia or modern-day Turkey, even more exotic than Spain. Now we know that these people had dark brown hair and brown eyes for the most part. Then steppe ancestry during the Bronze Age added further diversity. And the mixing of these three foundational peoples created the foundational DNA of Western Europeans, including the Irish and the Scottish. So this combination of dark hair and blue eyes is actually an ancient Atlantic one. Now, from the archaeological record as well, we know there were extensive networks of trade and cultural exchange in the Atlantic zone, linking Iberia, France, Britain and Ireland, going back thousands of years. And these deep Atlantic links were covered a lot in the book on the ancient Celts written by archaeologist Barry Cunliffe. Now, when it comes to the Black Irish look, climate and sexual attractiveness could also play the role, as blue eyes are likely more advantageous in places like Ireland and Scotland, given our weather. And it is also a striking combination. So is there a Spanish secret in your surname? Well, the answer is probably a nuanced yes, but not in the way the legends suggest. The Black Irish are not simply descendants of one maritime disaster in 1588, outside of perhaps some very isolated cases. Instead, they reflect Ireland and Scotland's long position within the Atlantic world. Ancient migrations, Gaelic kingdoms, merchant ports, maritime trade, Catholic alliances, occasional foreign survivors, and centuries of stories that blurred the line between history and legend, which is just as interesting as the Armada story itself as far as I'm concerned. But to find out more about the Black Irish legend, please click here, where I go into more detail on different aspects of this legend. And if you'd like to find out more about the origin stories that link Spain with Ireland and Britain, check out my member on the video. I'll put a link in the description below. But yeah, thanks for watching, please subscribe and hit the bell, and I'll see you next time.